Welcome back to Spiritual You Tshuva. Today I would like to really get to the practical aspect of things. Until now we've been talking about the philosophy, the theory, we've been trying to clear up mistakes that people have. But it's time to finally get to work and explain how. How does sustainable tshuva even work? So we're going to have a little bit more of theory just to understand how it works, and we're going to jump right into the practical aspect of it. I want to start with just thanking HaKadosh Baruch Hu for the ability to be here. The past 2 weeks have been very, very difficult for me, ending in a week of severe illness. And Baruch Hashem, I'm healthy and I'm back here. V'chastei Hashem Yisbarach. Let's start with, how does the tshuva feel? How does the struggle with the Yetzer Hara feel? So if you're like me and a lot of people that I talk to, it seems like an uphill battle, a never-ending uphill battle. What does that mean? We want to do bad stuff. We have a little child inside of us, a fun-loving, creative, passionate little guy or girl that wants to have fun. And then we have the mature, responsible, adult part of ourselves, the staid, the boring, and the mature part that just says, no, 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 think of the future. Don't just have pleasure right now. What about the long term? So it seems like this battle between fun, passion, excitement, and boredom, maturity, and the deeper, perhaps slower satisfaction that comes from that. But if it's going to be this way, then it's kind of like holding a horse back. You're holding, and eventually it's going to break away at some point. And I guess a lot of us experience it in that kind of way. We're good, we're good, we're good, we're bad. We're good, we're good, we're good, we're bad. And if it happens too many times, we give up. Well, we don't really believe we can change. The really, really important thing to understand is that this is a mistake. It's a fabrication created by the Yetzer Hara. It isn't true. It doesn't have to be this way, and it actually isn't supposed to be this way. What do I mean? Spirituality can be, and is meant to be, actually is, more fun, more enjoyable, in a passionate, exciting way than all the sin and all the junk that the Yetzer Hara can throw at us. Unless I want to explain this in 3 levels. First, I'm going to explain this on a mystical level, then on a theoretical level, and then on a very, very practical level. So I want to share something with you that I learned from my Rebbe, Rabbi Cyril Wilk, Shlita. And he explained, first on a mystical level, what it means. What are we talking about when we say that spirituality is actually more fun, more tasty, more yummy, more pleasurable in the most regular, simple way than Averis? And he starts off with the Mishnah in Avos. The Mishnah in Pirkei Avos says, Aseh ritzoncha k'ritzano. Make your will like God's will, which is a very strange statement. The Mishnah says, we want you to want what Hashem wants. How do you change your desires? Is it possible to change our desires? Because if you think about it, this is exactly what we just said. We want to do all that bad stuff, but we have to control ourselves, willpower, maturity. We rein it in. Oh, no, 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 don't do that. That's how it feels to us. The Mishnah tells us that it's possible to do it very differently. It's possible to change what you want. Imagine that. Imagine if we wanted spirituality more than all the sins and all the things. Imagine if ethics and morals were more fun, so to speak, than all the other stuff. That's what the Mishnah says we have to do. How do you do it? Now here comes the cool part. The Kabbalah Sfarim teach us that the entire universe is really made up of 10 elements called spheros. When I say the entire universe, what I mean is all of physical matter. The way Hashem relates to the universe also has to do with these 10 spheros, or otherwise known as midot. And the way human beings interact, run our lives, and interact with each other also have to do with these 10 midot, these 10 spheros. Similar to what science has discovered, that all of the universe is made up of atoms. We live in a very, very multifarious, different kind of universe. And yet everything, when you look at it under a microscope, looks very, very similar. It's all based on the same atoms, just made up of electrons, protons, etc. So in a spiritual sense, in a mystical sense, the source of the world also has that kind of makeup that it's comprised of these 10 spheros, and each sphere is made up of 10 spheros, etc. They are broken up into 2 parts. There's the higher 3 and the lower 7. And it parallels the human body. The higher 3 parallels the head, and the lower 7, the rest of the body, the torso, etc. Let's focus on the top 3 right now. And the most basic way to codify them is Keser, Chachma, and Bina. Okay, called Kachab, Keser, Chachma, and Bina. What does this mean? Very, very simply, Keser is the first thought, the first desire, the inkling. Chachma is when I have, just a raw thing, that it is what I need. Bina is when I start breaking it down, And then there's something called das, which is sometimes listed separately and sometimes not, which is when I make my decision. It's actually the same thing as keser, but it's when I know what the keser is. I clarified and I decided, oh right, that's the thing that I was desiring with my keser. That's keser, chachma, and bina. Let's focus right now on keser. Keser is desire. And then since that's the first thing, it's actually on top of the head. If you think about it, a keser means a crown. And it's interesting that every other part of these spheros is parallel to a part of the body, but Keser is not part of the body. Keser is a crown which is on top of the body. And what that signifies is that our desire comes from somewhere hidden. We don't really know. Why do we want things? Why do we want those things and other things? Where does motivation come from? It's one of the biggest mysteries, right? So we know we want this thing. It comes from something that's actually above us. It's beyond us. It's in a higher sphere. It's represented by Keser, something that sits on our head, which makes the problem much deeper. How can you change your desire? What does the Mishnah mean when it says, change your desires so that you want spirituality? How do you change something that's above you that you can't even get a sense of where it comes from? And here is a secret taught to us by the Sefer Tal Oros, which is a Kabbalah Sefer. And he says something amazing. There is something higher, even than our desire, than our ratzon. And that is pleasure. And if you think about it, it's obvious. You only want something that gives you pleasure, the way he says it. Where there is no pleasure, there is no desire. You could be the most amazing thing in the world, the most delicious ice cream cone in the world, but if you just had 10 ice cream cones, it's not going to give you any pleasure. You don't want it. Trust me, I tried it. Okay? If you just had too much of something, it could be the most fantastic thing in the world. You don't want another one. Where there is no pleasure, there is no desire. The way that's reflected in the spheros, because there's nothing higher than Keser, so how does that work? So he says there's actually something called the hidden aspect, which is the higher part of Keser, and he calls the Atik Yomin, which is another name of the manifestation of God, and it means the ancient one, and that is the Ne'elam, hidden, higher part of, so to speak, Keser, once again called the Atik Yomin, and that parallels, that's the source, so to speak, of our pleasures. That's the source of pleasure. And pleasure, of course, is the source of Keser, of our desires, and everything else just flows from that. Okay, so this is kind of a window to help us understand something. If there's something higher than desire, which is pleasure, what if we could manipulate that? What if we could play around? What if we could train ourselves to enjoy more sophisticated, higher things? And we know that can be done. Very simply, in the world that we live in, a common example, some people like moldy cheese. They spend a lot of money for it. Blue cheese. This thing is moldy, it's stinky, it's no good. But I don't know, that's just me because I don't appreciate those things. But if you learn how to appreciate, you'll spend a lot of money for it. Okay, modern art. If you never learned how to appreciate it, Picasso looks like someone with multiple personality disorder. Okay, but if you understand what it is, apparently you go to college and you can learn about this, and you could come to appreciate the different perspectives that he's showing you. And wow, that gives me pleasure, that's so deep. So then I want it, and people spend a lot of money for this stuff. All kind of strange art. If you learn how to appreciate it and get pleasure from it, you'll want it. And you'll want it bad enough to spend a lot of money and hang that weird stuff in your living room. Okay, the same thing applies to dry wines and all kind of stuff that to the untrained palate gives no pleasure, and therefore you don't want it. When you develop your taste, you can learn how to appreciate it, learn how to enjoy it, and want it. And get this, spirituality is an acquired taste. Of course, it's something that it should be intuitive, but because of the fact that we live in a body and we have a Yetzer Hara that comes very early in our life, that kind of gets covered over. And we can train ourselves, and that's what actually we need to do, what the Mishnah is telling us that we need to do, is to learn how to have more pleasure in spirituality. And when we do that, we're actually going to want spirituality more than the other stuff. Now, this probably sounds too good to be true. Very nice, beautiful, mystical, theoretical stuff. How do you do this in a practical way? So send your email to thetorahcenter@gmail.com. Join our Chabura, our spiritual Tshuva Chabura. We are putting these principles into actual practice, learning how to train ourselves to associate pleasure with spirituality and pain with sin, so that we actually want to do mitzvahs more than sin. Come and join us.